She smiled before she said it, that kind of slow, knowing smile that didn't need words. You always did have that look. It wasn't a flirt, not exactly. But something in her tone, soft, deliberate, almost teasing, made the air between us tighten. I hadn't seen her in years. My friend's sister, Elena, used to pick us up from school when she was already in college. Back then, she was the definition of composed, the sort of woman who moved through chaos without letting it touch her. Now, standing across from her in her kitchen, the years between us felt both distant and impossibly thin. Her hair was pulled loosely behind her neck, a few strands falling out, catching the light. The afternoon sun came in through the blinds, striping her face in warm gold and shadow. I could smell coffee, faintly burnt, the kind left forgotten on a counter. You've changed, she said. Her voice had that low, steady rhythm that made every word sound intentional. So have you, I answered, though the moment I said it, I realized how obvious it sounded. She tilted her head a little, as if amused. That's what time does. It changes everything. But her eyes didn't match the casual tone, they lingered, almost searching. There was something in the quiet that followed. A refrigerator hum. A distant car passing. Her fingers traced the edge of a mug absently. I found myself watching the motion, the soft curve of her hand, the small tension in her wrist. Still staring too long, she murmured, not looking up. I'm just. I started, then stopped. Whatever excuse I had felt too rehearsed. She looked up then, directly. Just what? I swallowed. The words didn't come. She smiled again, smaller this time, not teasing, almost sad. That smile stayed with me longer than it should have. The conversation drifted after that, into small talk, my studies, her job, the new city. But beneath every word, there was something unsaid. Every pause had a weight. Every glance felt like the start of something neither of us meant to start. When she moved closer to set her cup down beside mine, her shoulder brushed my arm. Just a second. But it was enough. I didn't move. Neither did she. It was such a small contact, yet the moment stretched, like the air had thickened around us. I could feel the warmth from her skin even after she stepped back. She didn't apologize, and neither did I. Her hand lingered near the counter, fingers curling slightly as if to steady herself. Your brother said you'd be in town for a while, she said finally. A week. Maybe more. Her lips pressed together in a line that wasn't quite a smile. That sound, the quiet hum between acknowledgement and something else, felt louder than the rest of the room. Then, suddenly, she turned, as if remembering something. I should, she began, but didn't finish. The sentence just hung there. We both knew she didn't mean it. Outside, the wind shifted. The curtain at the window moved, brushing against her arm. She looked toward it, though her eyes didn't seem to see anything beyond the glass. When she finally met my gaze again, something had changed. The careful composure she carried, the distance, had cracked, just slightly. Enough to let something real slip through. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said quietly. I wanted to ask how, but before I could, a door creaked open down the hall. Footsteps. She stepped back. The space between us filled again with air, light, and everything we hadn't said. And just like that, her voice, her warmth, that smile, all of it became a silence I couldn't unhear. She found me the next afternoon in the garden, pretending to read. The truth was, I wasn't really turning pages. I'd been listening to the faint sound of her voice through the open window, that low, calm tone she used even when talking about ordinary things. Didn't think you'd still be here, she said, stepping out barefoot onto the grass. Her hair was tied up again, but looser this time. I looked up. Didn't think you'd notice. She smiled, a little slow. I notice more than you think. The air between us felt softer than yesterday, not easier, but less formal, like we'd both silently agreed to stop pretending it was casual. She sat down near me, close enough that the hem of her dress brushed my knee when the wind shifted. I tried not to look at it, not to think about how aware I was of every movement she made. Your brother told me you've been through a rough patch, she said. Yeah, I admitted. Something like that. She didn't press, but waited, and I found myself speaking anyway. About the breakup that left me hollow, about the feeling of being half-formed, unsure of what came next. She listened, not the polite kind of listening people do when they're waiting for their turn to talk. Real listening. Her eyes stayed steady on mine, patient, unflinching. When I stopped, she said quietly, "You're too young to be that tired." I gave a short laugh. "Guess I learned from the best." She raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to be flattering or sad?" "Both," I said. Her gaze softened. "You think I've got it all figured out?" I hesitated. "Don't you?" Her hand moved, almost absently, to pluck a leaf from the grass. She rolled it between her fingers before answering. "Once, maybe," she said. "Now I just keep busy. It's easier than stopping long enough to realize what's missing." The way she said it, not sad, just factual, hit harder than I expected. For a moment neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rustle of trees and the quiet thrum of distance closing in. Then she reached out, brushing something from my shoulder, a small gesture, almost meaningless. Except she didn't pull her hand away right away. Her fingertips rested there, light as breath. I could feel the warmth radiating through the fabric. Neither of us moved. It wasn't the kind of touch that asks for anything. It was the kind that says I see you, and maybe I shouldn't. When she finally did pull away, her hand lingered midair for a heartbeat longer than it should have. "I should get back inside," she murmured but didn't stand. I looked at her, trying not to stare, failing completely. Her lips parted slightly, maybe to speak, maybe to breathe. The space between us felt thin again. This time neither of us pretended not to notice that it happened on a Sunday evening, one of those hours that feels too still, when the light outside is dim enough to soften everything but not yet gone. I'd come by to return a book I hadn't actually finished. She opened the door barefoot, hair damp from a shower, wearing the kind of quiet ease that made it impossible to remember why I was there in the first place. "You could have just texted," she said, taking the book but not moving aside. "I was in the neighborhood." She smiled, a trace of disbelief in it. "You live 20 minutes away. I like this neighborhood." Her laughter came soft, almost reluctant, but it lingered. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I didn't mean." "But I did." And she knew. Inside, the air smelled faintly of citrus and rain. She was making tea, her hands steady, practiced. I stood in the doorway, watching the small movements, the way she tilted her wrist, the curl of steam rising past her face. "You're quiet today," she said without looking at me. "You make it hard to think." That earned a pause, short, sharp, not defensive but alert. She turned, eyes searching my face as if she wanted to hear it again, but didn't dare ask. Before either of us could speak, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at it, frowning slightly. "It's your brother," she said. "He's on his way." The words hung there like a warning. For a second, the sound of boiling water filled the silence between us. Then, without thinking, I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat from the kettle and the faint warmth of her breath. "You should go," she whispered, but she didn't move. "Do you want me to?" Her eyes flicked up to mine, then down again. "Don't ask me that." I could feel it, the hesitation, the pull, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between us. She was close enough that I could see the faint shimmer of water on her collarbone, the tremor in her throat as she swallowed. The tea hissed, spilling over slightly, but neither of us moved to stop it. Her hand brushed mine, maybe by accident, maybe not. The touch was light, but it felt like it reached straight through me. "Someone might see," she murmured. "Then tell me to stop." Her fingers tightened, not pushing me away, just holding on for one impossible second. Then footsteps outside. A familiar voice calling her name. She pulled back fast, turning off the stove, forcing her voice steady. "In here!" she called out. I stepped back, my pulse loud in my ears. My friend walked in, smiling, oblivious. The world reset itself in an instant. 2 people, a kitchen, tea cooling on the counter. But as he talked, she glanced at me once, over his shoulder, a quick, breathless look that said what neither of us ever would. A line had been crossed, even if no one saw it. And from that moment on, pretending was no longer an option. It had been 3 days since the kitchen. 3 days of pretending nothing had happened, and failing miserably. Every time I saw her, something tightened in my chest. Every time she looked away too quickly, I knew she felt it too. By the 4th evening, the silence between us had become unbearable. She was out on the porch when I found her, sitting on the steps with a glass of wine, watching the sky bruise into dusk. Her sweater slipped from one shoulder, and I could see the line of her neck illuminated by the fading light. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she said without looking at me. "Then tell me to stop." Her sigh came slow, trembling a little. "You don't make things easy." I sat beside her anyway. Not too close, just close enough to feel the faint warmth of her body against the cool air. For a while neither of us spoke. The crickets filled the silence. The streetlights flickered on one by one. Finally she said, "You don't understand what you're doing." "Then explain it to me." She turned then, eyes sharp and tired all at once. "You're my brother's friend." "You're an adult," I interrupted. "So are you." "That's not the point." "Then what is?" She hesitated. Her voice softened, breaking at the edges. "It's been a long time since someone looked at me the way you do." The confession hit harder than anything she could have said. For a moment, she seemed almost startled by her own words. Her hand came up to her mouth, then fell uselessly to her lap. I reached over before I could think better of it, brushing a strand of hair from her face. My fingers grazed her cheek, warm, trembling. She didn't move. Her breath caught. "You can't," she whispered. "I already have." Her eyes met mine, a quiet, desperate challenge. "You don't know what this would cost. Then why aren't you walking away?" The question hung between us like the last drop of rain before a storm. She turned toward me, so close I could see every flicker of light in her eyes, every small tremor in her lips. My hand was still at her jaw, my thumb just beneath her chin. Time slowed. The air felt too heavy to breathe. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "If you touch me again..." She didn't finish. I leaned in, not enough to close the space, just enough to feel the heat of her breath against my skin. The glass slipped from her hand and rolled down the step, the faint clink breaking whatever spell we were under. We both froze. Her eyes widened, her lips parted. Somewhere inside, a door opened, her brother's voice calling out. She turned sharply, her hand brushing mine as she stood. "You should go," she said, too fast, too steady. I didn't move. "Please," she whispered. And though every part of me ached to stay, I stepped back into the dark, leaving her there, breathless, trembling, with everything between us half said and unfinished. I didn't see her for almost a week. No texts. No messages. Just silence, the kind that hums louder the longer it lasts. Then one night, I got a message from her brother. "You should probably stay away for a while. She's dealing with something." He didn't say more, but that was enough to twist something in my chest. I went anyway. Her house was quiet, lights dimmed except for the kitchen. She was sitting at the table, elbows on the surface, face in her hands. When she looked up, her eyes were red, not from crying recently, but from holding everything in too long. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know." "Then why are you?" "Because I thought maybe you'd say what you didn't last time." She laughed softly, a hollow, unsteady sound. "You think it's that simple?" "I think it was, until we made it complicated." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "He knows," she said finally. The words dropped like glass. I stared at her. "Your brother?" She nodded. "He heard something that night. The porch. Us." My pulse quickened. "What did he say?" "He didn't have to say anything." Her voice broke on the edges of restraint. "He looked at me like I'd done something unforgivable. She stood pacing, one hand brushing her hair back in frustration. He thinks I was taking advantage of you. I almost laughed, but the sound came out wrong. If anything, I don't, she said sharply, spinning to face me. Don't make it noble. Don't make it worse. I stepped forward, instinctively, until we were only a breath apart. You think I care what he thinks? Her jaw clenched. You should. I don't. You should. Her voice cracked this time, too loud, too raw, and then fell into silence. She pressed her palms to her face again, whispering, You don't understand what it costs to even feel this again. I reached out before I could stop myself. My hand found her wrist. She didn't pull away, but she trembled beneath my touch, just a subtle shiver, like every nerve was awake. I don't want to ruin your life, she said, her voice small now honest. Then why are you still holding my hand? Her breath caught. We stood there like that, not speaking, just the air between us thick with everything we tried to bury. Then she pulled her hand free, slow, deliberate. He asked me if I had feelings for you, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I took a step closer. Why not? Because saying it makes it real. I exhaled, barely a whisper. It's already real. For a moment neither of us moved. The kitchen light flickered, faintly buzzing, and her lips parted like she might say something more, but didn't. Instead, she turned away. If you come back again, she said softly, you won't be leaving. Her voice shook on the last word. And that was how I knew she wasn't warning me. She was surrendering. Rain came that night, the kind that turns everything outside to blur and reflection. I don't know why I went back. Maybe I needed to see her face when she said it was over. Maybe I just wanted her to stop pretending it already was. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Her expression was unreadable, tired, guarded, but something behind her eyes faltered the moment she saw me. You shouldn't have come, she whispered. You told me if I did. I stepped closer, my voice barely steady. I wouldn't leave. She hesitated, then moved aside. Inside, the house was quiet except for the rain against the windows. The air smelled faintly of lavender and something warmer, her perfume, faint but unmistakable. She stood by the table, her hands gripping the back of a chair. I meant what I said, she murmured. This can't go on. I nodded. Then tell me to go. She looked up, eyes meeting mine, wide, searching, conflicted. Don't make me say it. Her voice broke on the last word. I crossed the distance between us slowly, every step deliberate. When I stopped, there were only inches left. I could feel her breath, shallow, uneven, the faint tremor that betrayed every word she wasn't saying. You think this is about control, she said. About wanting what you shouldn't. Isn't it? I asked. She shook her head, her eyes flicking down, then up again. No. It's about being seen. And I haven't been, not like this, in years. Her confession landed like a heartbeat. I raised my hand, just enough to brush my fingers against her cheek. She didn't flinch this time. Her eyes closed, her breath catching softly as though the air itself had weight. This isn't fair to you, she whispered. Maybe not. But it's real. Her hand came up, covering mine against her skin. For a moment she leaned into the touch, barely, but enough to make the room disappear. Then she opened her eyes, and everything in them said what her voice couldn't. We both moved at once, not quite a kiss, not quite restraint, caught in that fragile, breaking moment where wanting and stopping became the same thing. Her forehead rested against mine, and her whisper came through the rain. If I let this happen, there's no going back. Then stop me. I breathed. She didn't. Instead, she stayed there, trembling, close enough that I could feel her pulse beneath her skin, fast and unsteady. Then, finally, she stepped back, a half-broken sound leaving her throat. Not like this, she said, her voice almost a plea. I nodded, though every part of me screamed to reach for her again. Silence filled the room. The kind that doesn't end, it just settles. And in that silence, we both understood it, the truth neither of us could unlearn now. We might walk away, but something in us would never leave the other again. Morning came soft and gray, the kind of quiet that follows storms. I hadn't slept much, either had she, I could tell. When I went back, the front door was already open, as if she'd been waiting. She stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, a sweater pulled loosely over one shoulder. There was no makeup, no careful composure this time, just her, as she was. "I thought you wouldn't come," she said. "I almost didn't." She smiled faintly, like she'd expected that answer. "You always almost don't." For a while, we didn't speak. The rain had stopped, leaving everything washed clean, the air, the ground, even the space between us. When I finally stepped closer, she didn't move away. Her eyes were tired but open, steady. "Are we really going to keep pretending we can undo this?" I asked quietly. She looked down, then back up at me. "No," she said simply. "We're not." There was no speech, no apology, no promise of forever. Just honesty, raw and plain and enough. We sat together on the porch steps, the wood still damp beneath us. She leaned slightly against me, her shoulder brushing mine. That small contact, unhurried, unhidden, felt more intimate than anything that came before. "I used to think getting older meant wanting less," she said softly. "Turns out, it just means wanting differently." I smiled. "And what do you want now?" Her hand found mine on the step. She didn't grip it, just rested there, fingers touching lightly. "Something real. Even if it's complicated." Her words weren't an invitation, they were a truth, quiet, lived in, imperfect. We stayed like that, watching the light shift through the trees. Her thumb brushed once against my skin, a simple gesture, but it carried all the things we hadn't needed to say out loud. "People will talk," I murmured. She exhaled, a small, almost amused sound. "Let them. They don't know what this feels like." And somehow, that was enough, not defiance, just peace. The kind you find after fighting too long against something inevitable. When she turned toward me, her expression softened. She reached up and brushed her fingers along my jaw, the same gentle, deliberate touch that had started all of this. "Come here," she whispered. I did. Not a rush, not desperation, just closeness, finally allowed to exist. Her forehead rested against mine, her breath warm. Either of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence felt full now, the kind that comes after a decision has been made, and both hearts have chosen the same thing. Later, when she smiled again, it was the same one that started everything, that knowing, quiet curve of her lips that seemed to hold both caution and courage. "You always did have that look," she said softly. "Maybe it was just you I was looking for," I replied. The wind moved gently through the trees. Her hand tightened around mine. And for the first time, there was no hesitation left, only peace.